Hello YouTube. It is Black Friday, honey. And I'm here to do something that I don't normally do often. I don't really like to highlight particular people in general. But considering that it is part of the reparations discussion, and I feel that this could be a excellent way to highlight white privilege and white complacency. I'm gonna put Mr. Fred CA on blast, honey. So sorry, Marion Williamson, but I had to do what I had to do now. I know she probably gonna look at my darn on thing and be like, "Oh Lord, here we go." And I promise I ain't gonna go really there to drag him, but I'm gonna highlight why racism has kept black people stagnant to this day. Because number one, I want to give a history lesson in America. Now y'all know 5% of the slaves throughout the whole slave trade was delivered to America, and out of that 5%, only 5% of white people in America own slaves. Now why is that important? Because if only 5% of white people own slaves in America, why did slavery lasted so long if 95% did not own slaves? And the reason why is the other 95% was somehow racially complacent for the longest and personally did not care. And it benefited the whole country overall on the profits of, making profits off of the backs of blacks. Where even though they were not for slaves, they did not own slaves, they might have been against slaves. It took well over 90 some years after the forming of the United States of America in 1776. It took about 90 some years for a rebellion to even happen. And even then, with that rebellion, it was not necessarily from a place of archaism of, oh, we doing this solely to free the slaves. It was because up in the north they really didn't have no need for slaves, and the south was benefiting a little bit more than the north. So due to that reason was the reason why the war was started, because as you know, you had covert racism in the north. You had Jim Crow that darn gonna propel throughout the North just as much as the South. You had black codes. So if the North was all free and was archalistic solely for black people, you wouldn't have had all that going on in the North as well. So it does not happen as much as in the South. Or all the hangings and stuff happen worse off in the South, but the North wasn't innocent. There was enough people that were complacent with all this that was going on that kept this going on all the way into the march in the civil rights era. And then we still had the crack cocaine epidemic, which pushed into the 1980s, and now we got police brutality in the later 2010s. Now why am I highlighting all this? Because all of this is the market why reparations is needed today, because people will say that it happened. Every human being alive today has been an ancestor that was a slave at some time. No, that's wrong, because you have people like Caitlyn Jenner that can show that she is 100% European and don't have any African ancestry. So that is a huge great a false statement to say that everybody's a descendant of a slave. No, there are some people that can trace that they were not descendants of slaves at all. Caitlyn being one of them. Not every white person is going to be mixed with some black DNA. And that little bit of blackness that you might have is the blackness that comes from Africa, not darn on American chastile slavery. So that's a false talking point right there. Slavery is over in the U.S. and has been over for 150 years. Get over it. Number one, if you would have took the time to listen to the reparations plan, it also includes the civil rights era, which was just 50 years ago. It also highlights redlining, which still happens to this day. Matter of fact, in North Carolina, we dealt with redlining in District 8 this year alone. I told y'all on my channel, and this is not no hearsay. This is stuff firsthand. That's why I say y'all people up in the north be darn on talking out the side of your darn on butt cheeks or whatever. I'm going to keep it nice since I'm, talking on Marion Williamson page. I'm going to try my best not to use no swear words and stuff up on here. However, y'all be talking out the side of your darn on behind, honey, not knowing all that really goes on, from the polls switching to You go to vote Democrat and it switches up Republican, but it never switches Republican to Democrat. You think that's a coincidence? You think it's a coincidence they found all them darn gone ballot them voter ballots that were somehow taken? You think that was a coincidence in North Carolina? The state that is arguing to keep darn gone Confederate statues up, but the Confederacy was the same ones that lost, but we honor Confederates more than Union soldiers. Why do we have Fort Bragg named after a Confederate soldier? Why do we have army bases named after the armies? After the darn gone Confederacy that lost the war that was for division. So how can you say in one breath that you are patriotic and that you're for your country, but then you support the Confederacy that was treasonous towards what our country's values stand for to this day? You see the hypocrisy in some of the people who think like this, because this is the mindset of people who think like that. And then and you see my response going into everything about, the army bases. Nobody calls out the army bases. And I'm a person where you can keep the Confederate statues up. But my thing is this: why aren't there any Union statues? If you're a person that is truly claiming to be patriotic and everybody should be depicted fairly, and you want the Confederate statues up for history and historical reference, I don't know why you can't go to the library and pick up a book nowadays. Everybody in this day and age don't want to read anymore, honey. But you want to call yourself trying to read, but you don't want to thoroughly read. You got to darn gonna look at a statue instead of looking at the Confederates in the book. Because the thing is, they ain't eradicating your history out the book. Y'all keep trying to darn gone take out black history. Matter of fact, North Carolina, they trying to still go through the infusion method with educating black history. Yet darn gone black people was very pivotal and darn gone bringing up states like North Carolina. Yet we are part of an infusion method as if we're nothing. You think you can just teach about black history during the shortest month of the year? And then you just go over the usual people, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, a little bit of Harriet Tubman. Y'all don't even talk about the full extent of Harriet Tubman. And that's about it. Madam C.J. Walker, George Washington Carver. You go on all of them. You don't go real in depth during the shortest day of the year. But I digress. But then we go into the race discriminations. We also highlight that the FBI even reported on their website that law enforcement was infiltrated by white nationalist groups. The same white nationalist groups that were notoriously known hanging people that are specifically black and white people that tried to rebel against the system and tried to help black people out. Because there were white people that were hung in addition to black people as well. So I'm not just saying everybody white was darn gone complacent with it. But it definitely wasn't, unfortunately, enough to change anything. And when it comes to today, there's a lot of complacency where somebody can feel comfortable saying, just get over it, not knowing the full context of what the reparations is for. Reparations is not just for slavery, honey. Reparations is also to counteract the civil rights era, counteract the redlining, counteract all the discriminations that are still happening to us to this day. So once again, and also even with this saying it's over 150 years ago, number one, it never officially ended. It just ended for privatized darn on people. The 13th Amendment specifically says that slavery is still allowed in the U.S. under the guise of the prison system. Now, why is that important? Because once again, the FBI reported, and I told him to fact check if he thought I was just making this up. The FBI reported that white nationalist groups have infiltrated law enforcement throughout the nation. So they went from hanging us and darn gone treating us as slaves when they could, to when they couldn't no more, they started killing us off because they had no more need for us. Then we had to darn gone rebel against that. And now you got the rise of the prison industry complex where there are more black people in jail than there were on the plantation. And you think that's just a coincidence? When I also point out that black people are jailed over 4 times as long as our white counterparts for the exact same crime. If a white person goes and hit somebody and a black person go hit somebody, the white person might get 6 months and some probation. The black person going to get 5 years for the exact same crime. You think that's by systematic? You think that's just by coincidence? And white nationalist groups are the ones in large numbers leading the charge? You don't think that's worth, atoning for? You don't think you think that's still in the past, sir? But let's go on and highlight some more of this. I want to show some previous replies as well. Here we go with this mess. I never been a slave owner. I don't owe anyone anything. You have never been a slave. Nobody owes you anything. I don't buy into all the white against black racism crap. I have lived in the South all my... Oh, I didn't even know he lived in the South. Oh, okay. What part of the South you living in, honey? See, I at least try to give you the benefit of the doubt later on by saying you must reside in the North with this darn on blindness. But you saying you live in the South, I want to know where in the South is you living. And I have never witnessed any black people being abused. Okay, once again, abuse come in many different darn policies. We ain't talking about worried about the Klan necessarily chasing us down the street in 2019. I just darn mentioned that they done traded their Klan cloaks in for darn law enforcement badges. So are you not watching the TV and seeing all the hashtags every other week of black people left and right getting gunned down? And word, and your little warning in advance, if anything pops up over here, I am on my personal Facebook, so we just going to ignore any messages and pop-ups that might happen. So, but back to the conversation. Are you not watching the news? Are you not familiar with Sandra Bland? Are you not familiar with Eric Garner? Are you not familiar with Philando Castile? Are you not familiar with any of those darn long hashtags or names? Are you not familiar with the hair discrimination that has been very prevalent in the South? Where students are getting kicked out of school if their hair is afro texture, can't walk down the aisle. Graduation if the cap is not fully secured on their head. Up until just a year ago, if your braids were too tight, even if your hat fit. So I can understand if it was impeding your arm or whatever, but even if your hat fit and stuff, just because they didn't like the fact that black people's hair was naturally thicker in braids, they darn didn't want that to happen. So it forced women to have their hair cut short or relax it. And then you want, or have a weave in, and then you turn around and make fun of darn black women who have to perpetually wear weave, but you're not leaving no options, because when black women wear their natural hair, we're getting critiqued for it. We're forced to keep it perpetually cut short, but a white woman can have her hair down all day long, and it's no problem. Black woman grow our hair out, it's a problem. So you're not seeing all that Fred in the South. But let's go on and continue on. And like I said, not all white people think like Fred. You have some of our white brothers and sisters that were actually speaking some common sense and highlighting that that her fellow people don't pay attention to hardships that don't apply to them. Pretty much highlighting just internal self-centeredness, which is very indicative of your ancestors that were not slave owners. They did not own slaves. Once again, only 5% of white people in America owned slaves. Yet slavery was able to reign supreme for over 90 years because the other 95% was complacent enough. If a slave was trying to run away off the slave plantation, your non-owning slave having ass ancestor would darn do everything in their power to help facilitate to stop that slave from running. So you your ancestors in a way perpetuated the darn situation, even if they did not directly have slaves themselves. So we're not going to mention that. And then you want to go to insults talking about You think I'm full of crap? Where I live, anywhere, companies and the government employees bend over backwards to hire minorities. Okay, once again, we're talking about black people, American descendants of slaves. Why is now you grouping everybody in? See, you see, that's another thing that black folks don't like. If we're talking about specifically black issues, Marion Williamson was making a post talking about specifically American descendants of slaves. She didn't use the term ADOS, but she was referring to black Americans. Why did you just group minorities in? When you say minorities, that can be darn on Marion Williamson. White women are a minority. Women, period, are considered minority. Anybody that's LGBT is considered minority. Anybody that is Native American is a minority. Asian is a minority. Hispanic is a minority. So now you're co-opting us and just saying, oh, you're anything other than a white man. A white straight man. Because once again, the topic is black people. So why is you talking about minorities? That's a darn piss poor deflection. Because once again, they could be hiring Hispanics, which they do in large numbers because they can get away with paying them far less money, because black people in America, we actually have to live on a living wage here. We cannot darn survive off of just making $4 or $5 an hour. We can't afford a pay cut. Hell, we can't even survive on the $7.25 an hour that is mandated in 21 states currently at the time of the recording of this video. 21 states currently have a minimum wage of just $7.25 an hour, which means you can work a full-time job and qualify for food stamps in most of those states. Once again, working a full-time job. So while people want to also make little jabs about when black people have to go on food stamps, that's why. When you're still working jobs. You don't mention about the education discrimination about black women are currently leading in education. Once again. So when people just talk about, oh, well, just give black people education and that's it. Honey, black women are leading in education already. We ain't lacking for darn gone degrees. It's just when we darn gonna get out of college, we now getting nitpicked by our hair, our skin color, and even the sound of our name. If our name sounds too ethnic, honey, the darn on application go in the trash. So once again, it's not about somebody, about me being afraid of my life or somebody chasing me down the street holding up a flaming tiki torch. It is about the darn gone person who looks at my name on the application and feels the need to throw it in the trash. About the person who encourages me to relax my hair or put a weave or something in that's straight. That's what we worried about. That's more problematic than worrying about a Klan just flat out chasing me. But this is the mindset he's in. So once again, I rebut him once more with a nice long lengthy statement. And then my good white sister here, Cindy, made a post about how banks block people of color from home ownerships. And and notice that he's just annoying me altogether because he can't debunk nothing that I'm saying. Because you'll realize that he ain't darn gonna rebut not one statement. Because how do you rebut this? And like I said, I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt that he lived in the North. But to find out that he lives in the South is really appalling. How he's being selectively tone deaf to this issue. And this is how I describe how minorities does not always favor black people. Any other minority can come up in here and get a job. Once again, Arabs, it is not by it is not by coincidence that somebody clear across in the Middle East can come to a black hood and get a darn on store quicker than black people who grew up in that said hood. When we go down to the office for loans, we can have a 700 credit score, 750, 800, and still they will find ways to deny us. But how in the hell did this Middle Eastern person ain't been up in this country but 2 minutes and he get the darn gone loan before I do? Not only do they get loans quicker than black people, but they get grants specifically to darn gone build stores in our neighborhoods. We don't even have grants for us. And it's our damn neighborhoods. But a Middle Eastern person can darn gone build a gas station or a convenience store quicker than black people, even black people who have excellent credit. Now, how do you explain that? Once again, here he go again talking about there is not one black person alive today in the U.S. or anyways alive today that has ever owned a slave in the U.S. Thus, no one is a victim today. No one is a perpetrator today. Thus, there is no damage to repair and no one responsible to make repairs. These are undeniable facts. No, it's an undeniable lie, because once again, the reparations is not just for the slavery. It also includes Jim Crow, which is just 50 years ago, which most people are still alive today. And matter of fact, I took the time to see Mr. Fred's darn on profile, and it's like, honey, your ass grew up right in that damn time frame, your damn self. Mr. darn on silver darn on old hound. I can't even call you a silver fox. You a silver hound. Darn on sitting up here perpetuating a lie. Talking about, oh, ain't nobody was around. Honey, you darn gonna look like you was 40-some years old back in the 1960s. So you gonna say you wasn't around for the hosing down of people? The segregation of schools? The hounds being seeked upon us? And you said you grew up in the South too? Come on now. But he saved darn gonna responding back to Cindy, because he didn't even want, number one, he ain't even want to entertain me. The fact that he didn't even feel the need to even darn gonna reply to me, that could be seen suspect within itself for a number of reasons. Because number one, I didn't insult you at nail bit of time. I'm insulting you now and calling you on blast on this darn on my platform. However, I'm darn gonna state nothing but facts. You responding back to Cindy ain't responding to me at all, honey. Once again, talking about it's because they believe it's a bad risk. Okay, what about a bad risk is it? I would think it would be more of a bad risk to take a chance on a Middle Eastern person who's only been in this country for 2 minutes, who don't got a long-standing darn on credit history, versus a black person who might have moderately good credit. Like, okay, so you're telling me somebody from the Middle East that don't got no credit history is more deserving of building a store in a black neighborhood quicker than a black person who's grew up in that neighborhood and knows the demographics and the people around there? But you're saying that it's a credit risk that black people might not pay the loan back? Really? So if we're going to go on that, explain why is there so many Middle Easterns that are able to get these loans, huh? I'll wait. I'll wait. Explain when people who've had 780, 800 credit scores still get denied. And they showed that they clearly can darn go and pay the loan back. How come that they wasn't able to get the loan? I'll wait. Once again, just stay deflecting. Once again, another sister of, I think that's Darlene. So it's not everybody. The only darn gone people perpetuating a race darn gone division is people like darn gone Free. Because now you have not one, but two white sisters that done kindly got him together, and an actual sister with an A, honey. We got two of our white sisters, S-I-S-T-E-R, and then one melanated sister. And you annoying all of us and staying with the fact that you don't owe nobody shit. Once again, right on, Darlene. And then this is my last thing I said right here. Fred, once again, the same thing could have been said about the atrocities that happened to Native Americans, but they still receive reparations payments to this day. Germany was responsible for the Holocaust, and Jews have already been paid and still were able to get more reparations from the U.S. in 2015. Now, not only was they able to get reparations until in 2015. But those reparations were signed off by President Barack Obama and Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders being a Jewish man, so there was no divisiveness when it came to paying out reparations towards descendants of the Holocaust, which was during a time period where, once again, most people were not alive. Not only were a time period where most people were not alive, but nobody in America was directly responsible for. But somehow nobody can answer the question that America can be altruistic enough to pay out reparations towards descendants of Jewish Holocaust people in 2015, but then Bernie Sanders turned around a year later and say that any type of reparations towards black people is divisive. Now let that make sense. If we can afford to pay for reparations for something that we were not directly responsible for, how come the government cannot come off of money that you're directly responsible for? Number two is this darn gone premise that somebody's going to darn gone ask you to come out the money directly. Number one, it's not coming out your darn gone pocket directly. Even if you was a slave owner, it's coming out as the way of darn gone taxes. And then we can break this shit down based off of how many people are in America versus how we matter of fact, let me go ahead and break this shit down. Since you want to talk about it can potentially come out in the form of darn gone taxes and stuff. Matter of fact, the way Merriam-Webster is proposing it, and your taxes wouldn't even go up at all. Because number one, the tax breaks that the wealthy get, which number one, Fred, you do not look like you fall within the top 0.1%. So number one, I'm trying to figure out how is the reparations going to hurt you when number one, you look like you make less than $1 million a year. You don't probably make $100,000 a year. The tax cut, ending the $2 trillion tax cut is going to darn gonna be more than 4 times the amount of money that can pay off reparations. So to every white person and to some darn gone coon and black folks talking about reparations is not needed, it's how you going to pay for it, it's too expensive, that's your answer right there. Ending the darn gone tax cuts on the wealthy. That darn gone tax cut don't serve no purpose. That was an extra darn gone incentive that did not darn gone trickle down to mount up to a hill of beans, baby. So once again, just ending that $2 trillion tax cut is more than 4 times the amount that you would need for the reparations proposal that Merriam-Webster is darn gone proposing. And even then, she's not even darn gone proposing all of it to be dispersed at once. She's demanding it to be dispersed over a course of 20 years. So 20 years into darn gone 500 billion is what, about $10 billion a year? So $10 billion a year. Let me go ahead and get my calculator out on this. So even if it did come out of taxpayers' money, let's say, okay, how many people in America, let's say out of 60 million working people, and that's being very conservative because I'm sure there's more than 60 million people working. But let's just say 10 billion into 60 million. That is $166. $166. But once again, this is over a course of 20 years. So divided by 20, that is $8.03 a year. $8.30 a year. So that is providing that 60 million people is actively working in the United States. If this was to somehow even come out of taxpayers' money, the amount would be so insignificant where I don't even think you should even have to worry about it. Once again, Mr. Fred, are you worried about $8 and an extra $8.30 being taken out of your check out of a course of a year? Not a week, not a day, not a month, but a year. $8.03 divided by 12, that's an extra 69 cents a month. So Mr. Fred is saying that black people, he shouldn't be on the hook to pay just a mere 69 cents a month. $8.30 a year, $166 over a course of 20 years. So you're saying that you're that hard up for money that $166 over a course of 20 years is too much? But I even told you that the money is not even going to come out of American taxpayers' dollars, period. But even if it did, is $166 really that much to you, Fred? And then once again, this same excuse is not applied to Native Americans who receive theirs annually. There's a time limit on us. Darn gonna Merriam-Webster said 20 years, that's it, you're done. So even with a time limit of 20 years, you still darn gone. I hate to say it, Merriam-Webster. I said I wasn't going to cuss, but I have to say it. You bitching and complaining over a darn gone $166 divided out over 20 years, which is like 69 cents a month. But you don't even ask or question how much of your taxpayer dollars is going out to fund, casinos and Native American reservations, honey. You don't say that about them. And then also I mentioned about the Asians, the descendant of Asian railroad workers. They darn gonna asking for reparations. I ain't hear not one complaint. I hear all the people like Fred talking about I wouldn't be in favor of paying reparations to anyone. Number one, you still deflecting because you did not answer my question directly. You ain't at me or nothing. Nobody alive today has been wrong. Nobody alive today is guilty of any kind of abuse. Said all I'm going to say. Yeah, you saying all you're going to say because you can't back up your darn on statements with any type of facts. Because the fact that you are knowing so many darn on atrocities that is going on against LGBT darn on citizens, our darn on rights being rolled back where we have to be in fear of a doctor denying us basic medical rights if we darn gonna go to the doctor based off their religion. So Donald Trump is allowing the allowing doctors to violate their oath or do no harm. Got transgenders kicked out of the army simply because of who they are. You're trying to make it where LGBTs can be denied housing simply because of who they are. You have in this case with Brian Allen where civil rights can be in question in regards to darn gone black people having to darn gone prove beyond a shadow of a doubt 100% that your firing was based off of solely discrimination. Even if it's 99.9%, that 0.1% can save that company from a lawsuit. So you are knowing all these issues that are going on with marginalized groups to this day by saying nobody alive today has been wrong. Really? What type of darn gone rose-colored glasses you got on? Must be nice. So ain't nothing going on. But I'm sure you can say that, Mr. Fred, because when you're an old white man, they don't got to worry about nothing. You don't have to worry about somebody denying your darn gone spouse the right to see you because they don't honor your marriage. You don't have to worry about even if you go to the courthouse to get married as a same-sex couple, you can have somebody that could be a bigot and still try to withhold your marriage license. Now, I understand that you don't want them getting married in the church or whatever, but you trying to deny a marriage license down in the courthouse. What happened to separation of church and state? What happened to not pushing your darn gone belief on somebody? But you pushing your belief on somebody within the darn gone law, within government. But then you'll turn around and say gay people are trying to push their lifestyle on you. That's the type of darn gone rhetoric that people like Fred would like to say. And then in regards to reparations, once again, I don't hear none of this darn gone same smoke for darn gone Asians trying to propose their reparations. I don't hear none of this same smoke for Native Americans who receive their reparations every single year. And most people was not even aware of the Holocaust survivors getting a payout. And nobody has had the courage to even bring this to Bernie Sanders' attention on that hypocrisy. And I'm sorry, Merriam-Webster, but I'm going to have to call you out too on this now. Now, you keep being nice and PC, and I ain't saying that you got to be as vulgar as me on the, in your interviews. But you need to start calling out the hypocrisy of some of your fellow constituents on how come, Bernie Sanders, it wasn't divisive when reparations were paid out to Jewish Holocaust survivors in 2015, but you find a problem for reparations to be paid out for black people. Merriam-Webster, I'm going to need you to start being a little bit more vocal. Now, you don't have to say it with as much hostility as me now. You don't have to say it with all this, because once again, this affects me personally. But, I give much respect to all my, white brothers and sisters who have also advocated for the cause on our behalf. For, Merriam-Webster being the most consistent on the campaign trail for it. Not being a pretender like Pete Buttigieg, who act like he was doing something for black people. But then his true darn on slip started to show. And then you had other people darn on thinking they proposing something, talking about, oh, well, we're going to propose education reform, HBCUs. Honey, do you know how many people with HBCU degrees that got masters and doctorates that can't even get a darn on job within they field? You got people with master's degrees forced to darn on flip a burger at darn on McDonald's because of the fact that they're still racially oppressed. So once again, what is education fixing if you don't fix that type of problem first? Which is why I also propose that that should be addressed as well. We should set up a special prosecution for darn on corrupt law enforcement agencies. Because we still have to deal with that component. But on an economic level, you can at least help us, be able to fund our own institutions by way of reparations. That's why I say it needs to go beyond just educational renewal. On the economic level, we need to be able to fund our black banks. We need to be able to fund, grants towards black farmers. We went from being a third of the farmer base, over 100,000 black farmers, to less than 2,000 black farmers a day. In the 1920s, there were over 100,000 black farmers, I think they said. And now, in 100 years later, going on to 2020, there is less than 2,000 black farmers. And then all the black farmers are getting cheated with doggone corrupt seeds and stuff. And, Marion Williamson got a whole policy on that in regards to, taking on the pharmaceutical industry and, getting on the FDA and all of they behinds. She's the best candidate, I tell y'all, that is running for president. But back in regards to this situation right here. This is why black people still have to remain consistent. And you're going to continue to hear us complain until something is done. Because while people like Fred can get to say that he don't see nothing happening, he don't get to see nothing. He don't see no atrocities happening to anybody. Ain't nobody being wrong. So while you get to say that as a white man, I'm trying to figure out, how do a white straight man such as Fred get to speak on behalf of marginalized people? The fact that you think you can be the speaker on issues that, whether it's affecting us or not, is deplorable enough within itself. Number two, the fact that you ain't called out no Native American, Asian groups, or any other marginalized groups that have received reparations, even for stuff that nobody has necessarily done alive. But you can't express why all of a sudden now we need to not pay it in regards to black people. That's strike number two. And strike number three is when somebody calls you out on that, you want to beat around the Mayberry bush and answer everybody else but me. That's strike number three. 3 strikes you out, boo-boo. So that's my thoughts on that. So in regards to anybody in the future who thinks like Fred, who has comments in regards to why reparations should be paid for black American descendants of slaves, here's your 40-minute video explaining why. I done debunked every negative stereotype that you can even think of. From, oh, well, it was so long ago. Oh, well, my people didn't own slaves. Well, I'm sure none of your people were, the ones raping and pillaging and killing off the Native Americans. But once again, as a whole government entity, the government is responsible and it has to be paid out. Number one, I'm trying to figure out why in the world you complaining as if you are coming off the tune of thousands upon thousands of dollars out of your personal savings account, as opposed to, I just broke down the numbers. Even if Marion Williamson forced it to come out of American dollars, if she just took it out of 60 million people's pockets over a course of 20 years, you're only missing 89 cents a month. So some of y'all get paid bi-weekly. So that's 45 cents a paycheck. So are you really that hard up for 45 cents a paycheck? You saying that you can't come off of 45 cents a paycheck to correct this issue? Oh, well, 45 cents build up over time. Yeah, it builds up to a total of $166 over a course of 20 years. And that's it. Because once again, we're not proposing reparations indefinitely like the Native American tribe. We're just, a matter of fact, we would prefer all our stuff up at once. But Marion Williamson is actually being a lot more lenient with darn gone making it 20 years. And y'all want to have complaints against that. Against 45 cents out of 60 million working darn gone paychecks, if it was to even be taken out of your paycheck. But once again, Marion Williamson told you that she plans on cutting the darn gone $2 trillion tax savings. So that alone right there can darn gone pay for reparations 4 times over from what she's trying to put the dollar amount on it as. So it technically, when it come out your darn gone pockets. So now what's the excuse now that I done showed you how it wouldn't even come out of darn gone the bottom 99% of darn gone working people? Now that you know that it's only going to hit the top 0.1% of people, and nobody in this comment section is a billionaire, what's the excuse now that reparations cannot be paid? And matter of fact, since we're taking out $2 trillion all at one whop of savings, that's even more of an argument where the reparations could be paid all up in one whop. I don't personally. Now, Mary, that's another reason why we disagree. I don't understand why it has to be over a course of 20 years as opposed to all at one time. And then another thing is, I mentioned that we have to even establish who is black anyway. Because when you have people such as Kamala Harris, a person who descends from a West Indian father and an Indian darn gone mother being able to claim African American, that is a huge confusion within itself. When you have President Barack Obama, who's a descendant of a white American woman and a Kenyan father directly from the country, and he's being able to be claimed African American, and when we hear African American, we specifically think of a Pacific ethnic group of people in America that is black racially, that descends culturally from American chattel slavery. So just off of that statement alone of what an African American is supposed to be, President Barack Obama nor Kamala Harris should even be qualified as that. Number one, Kamala is a full Asian, a majority Asian woman. Her father is darn gone Asian, and her mother is Asian. But she's darn gone parading in blackface. But even for the sake of argument, let's say the father was a black darn gone person and she was biracial, her darn gone black side would still be from the West Indies and not from America. So the fact that we don't even have that distinction set up first in place before we even talk about dispersing reparations, that's problematic within itself. Which is why I also commend Marion Williamson for employing that she will come up with a panel of black people who is educated on this subject that will set up the actual rules and parameters of who gets the payments and how it should be dispersed. But once again, like I said, we should still, add an extra zero onto that dollar amount, honey. I'm still, if we can afford $2 trillion a year for darn on universal basic income, I don't understand why we can't come up off of $5 trillion for reparations, plus an extra $1 trillion to be paid out directly to American descendants of slaves that are still black today. It should go to people who are still subject to face a level of atrocity today. And I'm going to create a whole video within itself breaking that down next week. I don't have time to do it this weekend, but look out for my video breaking down how to identify black American people who descends from chattel slavery, who should specifically get the chattel slavery in great detail. But until then, this video serves as a purpose of debunking every negative darn gone question that has been thrown up at this point about why reparations shouldn't be paid. Oh, well, it's so long ago. Once again, this video, anybody who has that crap to say, just refer them to this video. So that is it, y'all. Feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will see y'all soon with more videos. Mwah.